Hello, I am teaching artist Lauryn Welch. Welcome to our stream. I am here today with Professor Lieu and teaching artist Alex Rowe. And today we have a fun game that is called Bad 2D Compositions. We're going to need your help in deciding whether a whole bunch of 2D pictures have good compositions or bad compositions. It's going to be great. But first, if your studio habits need a kick in the butt, Art Prof has everything you need: tutorials, critiques, and professional development. Clara, can you introduce this fun activity for us?
Yeah, we're going to get started by talking about some common issues we see in 2D compositions. And I would really recommend you guys watch this stream in conjunction with this one, because what we do in this stream is we talk about very basic guidelines, things that we look for in 2D compositions to keep them engaging and dynamic. And so these are some of the things: engaging with the corners and the edges. We have lots of examples where we'll show you a painting like this and then point out specifics, like when a shape gets cropped off of the edge. Now, we're not really here to tell you guys exactly that, because if it were that easy, wow, my life would be so much more straightforward. What we're really here to talk to you guys about is to make you aware when you make compositions, because these compositions we're going to show you right now, the really common ones, it's not so much that they're bad, but that you see them so much that they just get really tiresome after a while. And you just notice that, oh, everybody does this, and so it gets very boring. Sort of like a cliche. It's not that a cliche cannot work, it's just that it's a cliche and everybody's seen it a million times. It gets very boring very fast. So the first one that is very common is centered composition. So Alex, can you tell us what might be the problem with centered compositions?
Essentially, centered compositions are just there. Everything is out on the table. There's nowhere for your eye to go. There's no journey for the viewer. Everything is just blatantly put there, and there's no sense of exploration.
Lauryn, why do you think sometimes centered compositions don't work, especially in portraits?
It comes across as too balanced a little bit, feels very static. And in a good painting, you want the viewer to stick around for a while. And a great way to do that is to have the whole painting activated. When you have something right in the center, especially a portrait, that's how we always see people. How can you make it different? How can you make us look twice? It gets very hard when everything is just right there, centered in front of you.
So Alex, what is the halo effect? Can you explain this and why we see it all the time in portraits?
I first heard about the halo effect in school, where it comes a lot from another flaw in drawing portraits, where you finish the face and then don't know what to do with the background. So you start to kind of fill it in, but you don't want to mess with the face. So you are very careful to leave it glowing around the head, very angelic, halo-like. And it's one of those things where it's part cliche, but it's also a very bad composition flaw, because it makes that high contrast just ringed around the head rather than guiding the eye.
I would like to hear from the chat. Guess what? It's confession time. Who here has done many centered portraits that are pretty boring with halo effects? I would like to know.
Me.
So you see this a lot. Me. I mean, were mine. So you guys have actual evidence of that. But you know what, you guys, portraits don't have to be that way. Lauryn, why do you think people think that, oh, it's a portrait, there's no other options?
I think, first of all, we are thinking about history, what we see in art history. A lot of us learn about art by seeing the Mona Lisa or Rembrandt painting or a historical painting of a president, something like that. And that's always very straightforward and informational. And I think that a lot of us treat portraits as informational. We want to see the detail of the face. We want a straight head-on view. We're not really thinking about narrative or, I don't know, about the whole painting itself. We're thinking about the person. So that's where people get stuck, I think.
Now, this is not just isolated to portraits. Centered compositions in general tend to be the default reaction, because what I find is that a lot of the reasons why we see these common issues with compositions, it's not because people are trying so hard and they can't think of something else. It's because they haven't thought about it at all. It's like a lot of these compositions, they're just default reactions. And so, Alex, why in the middle? Is it just that people don't think about it, or it's convenient? Do you have any theories about this?
I think it's exactly that. And in a way, organizing a composition, if you don't plan for it ahead, can be kind of a bummer. Of you can spend so much time being very technically good and really good at your craft and really good at color and light and texture, and then just not really even aware of composition, and it can all kind of go to waste in that way.
David said, it's been a long time since I did a portrait. I was so lazy, I didn't even do a background. And Slepneer says, if you are too focused on the portrait, you don't think of the whole thing.
Clara, I've got another reason, though, that people might make a bad composition, or why I've made bad compositions. And that's that they're afraid to make a bad composition or make something look unbalanced. I feel like a lot of the times when I have made a boring composition, it's because, or put everything in the middle, it's because I don't want to screw it up by making something distracting or having the balance thrown off. So I end up sticking with the safer thing, which is actually the not great thing.
Well, this is a good distinction that Blue Wolf is bringing up. They say when Prof does it, she calls it a, quote, study versus a painted piece. Yeah, there's different reasons why you, like, if you're just trying to get better at drawing light and you're not doing a full out sledge composition, then it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, I don't do a thumbnail sketch for every artwork I make, but I think a lot of the time when people do set out to make a finished piece, they're oftentimes not thinking about these things. Okay, what do we mean, Alex, by compositions that have no focal point?
When it doesn't have a focal point, the eye can go anywhere, as shown almost expertly, I might say, in this piece of high school art that I did, where there's no sense of awareness of where the eye goes or the narrative element of the piece or even the emotional element. It's just kind of bing, 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 bing. The artist just puts things where they want them to go without even thinking about where they should best go.
I think it's sometimes a matter of too many distractions like this one. Thank you, DP, for making this in high school. So we can use it as an example. There's so much that you don't even know where to look. Or what is this one doing, Lauryn, that doesn't work either, a la Jordan McCracken Foster?
Things are just sprinkled on a blank page, and we don't really have any kind of context or understanding of why they are spread out equidistantly like they are.
Tom G is asking, so should you, quote, never put it in the center? Alex, what's your take?
Short answer, no. Like, I think that one of the things that we'll talk about as we go through professional examples of household name artists towards the end of this stream is that sometimes bad composition are used intentionally. So I think that my cop-out answer to yes or no for centered compositions is think about it. And if it fits your intent within the piece, go for it.
So much of this, you guys, it's awareness. Asking yourself, why do I need that face to be there? Is there a better way to say this? And oftentimes people don't ask themselves that question. They just stick it there. And it doesn't occur to them that, oh, what would happen if I put the head in the upper left-hand corner instead of in the middle? Would that maybe communicate my idea better? Matthew is asking, should I have good technical skill or should I make a good composition? Which is the thing I should give importance to? Lauryn, what do you think?
Composition is a technical skill. It's one of those basics that is a visual thing that makes up the entire piece. So you're balancing having a good compositional technical skill with maybe a good facility with shading or detail or something like that. And I think what you want to put more weight on depends on what you want to draw attention to. I think composition is really good at being a map for the viewer's eyes, but you can use other technical processes to do the same thing and focus less on composition. It's a case-by-case basis.
In my opinion, Matthew, in general, you should strive to have both. You shouldn't say, oh, I did a great job in this composition. Screw the technique. I don't need to work on that. On the other hand, though, I will tell you guys, I tend to notice bad composition more than technical skill. Like if something is beautifully painted, but the composition is really boring, it drives me bats. Whereas if something has like a really good composition, and let's say the technique isn't stellar, sometimes you can get away with it a little bit more. But like Lauren said, it's case by case.
Yeah, Clara, okay. I just want to amend that quickly and say the reason I answered that the way I did is because there's so much painting these days where it's good painting, but it intentionally uses bad composition. So I feel so confused about composition at this point.
All right, Alex, what do we mean by the random horizon line or corners in the image?
Random horizon line is, I think, kind of the theme of our composition talk tonight is I didn't think about it. And so I know whenever I included a random horizon line, it was from, oh, well, that looks kind of empty. I should probably put a line there and then make the top of it a different color.
People oftentimes think it will give their painting depth. I sure did when I made this painting. But when I look at this painting now, the edge of that, quote, table, I don't know what I was trying to do. It's like the flattest part of the whole painting. And to me, it totally ruins the rest of the piece. So it's like any amount of time you spend on the other parts gets ruined by you putting in this like random thing in the background. I think I was trying to be creative. And this is by Jordan. This is actually the first drawing Jordan ever did in my class as a freshman at RISD.
They're all just kind of huddled. They're cute. They're little box people.
Is this his Rubik's Cube?
Oh. I see.
It's from the raffle the other night. That's so funny.
It's like a cubist version of a Rubik's Cube, or so it's all deconstructed. Wait. This is a good question that just popped up. Matthew's asking, how do you plan a composition?
That's terrific. So my first thought, because I loved doing, what got me into art was like designing and drawing characters, right? So I didn't start to think about it until I was posed the question of how do you want to present this character? Where in the sketchbook, it was always you show everything. Nothing is hidden. But actually finishing those sketches and then doing this little, that's how I first started, is kind of guiding through of which looked more interesting.
I do that.
The other thing you can do, Matthew, is thumbnail sketches. And Kat Huang and I recently did a stream where we talk about thumbnails and how to do them. And then we actually do a demo live. So I really recommend watching that because that's a great place to get started. Okay, let's talk about blank backgrounds. And again, I know there are times just in your sketchbook, you just draw on whatever. That's not the same thing. We're talking about compositions. And a lot of the pieces you guys are looking at were presented as finished pieces in, say, a portfolio or in a show. So yeah, I understand the difference. Trust me. So Alex, what is it about just blank backgrounds that oftentimes can be boring or problematic?
I think with blank backgrounds, the big thing that I want to emphasize what you just said is that they're A-okay for a sketchbook page, like 100%. It's when you start to present that as finished, it's like, okay, it's clearly not finished though. Like it's clearly left unsaid. Not enough has been done to really make this image evocative and to really connect it to the audience. You're just essentially doing what you want to put in there and then not putting in the extra work to make the whole image work.
Yeah, like Lauryn, look at this drawing. Why do you think in this case the blank background doesn't work? Or maybe you do. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I don't think it works. I think it makes the whole piece look very flat. And it also does this thing in the corner where the line of the beetle is cutting off the edge of that paper. What's the point of even having the edge of that paper now? It's just totally severed and white, and I need more information.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring this up just because we were honestly talking about this before stream of white backgrounds are good for writing and lines. And if you guys dive in, there's a lot of images from like Golden Age illustration where they'll intentionally leave blankness for the text, either the back of a book cover or the interior magazine illustration. So that's something to keep in mind about ideal composition planning depending on its final form.
All right, let's talk about filler backgrounds, because you know what happens? When I used to teach RISD freshman drawing, the first couple of weeks, I'd have to get people out of the white background mindset, okay? And then they'd get out of it and they would do this, what I call a filler background. They would say, oh, I put in the back. And I'm like, this is almost as bad because you're just coloring this in. You don't really have any intention or purpose behind this. And I mean, yeah, there's something there. And you could argue that maybe you need that, but more often than not, people are just coloring in the spaces. What do you think, Lauryn? Why don't you talk about Alex's drawing? Alex did this drawing in my class.
Yeah, I think sometimes it can be interesting, but here it's almost the same as having that white background. It's just slightly better. You have a gradient going on, so maybe I can get a sense of depth or space or something. One thing that I think is misleading about these kinds of images is that they can look fairly okay in a digital slide, but when you see them, or as like a little thumbnail, but when you see them in person, there's not enough information and there's not enough there to hold you to the entire composition.
Dara is saying, I always like leaving blank backgrounds to highlight the subject because I guess I'm just lazy. Well, Dara, you are not the first person to tell me that is your reason. What do you say to that, Alex? That people say, oh, well, if I put in a background, that's going to take away from the subject, and I really want people to focus on the subject, so therefore, I don't think I can put anything back there.
I'd say first off, like, don't call yourself lazy or being really mean to my friend. Second off, I think that, yeah, we all do that. And it's understandable logic of, oh, I don't want to mess with anything. But that's the thing, it's more impressive to juggle more things. So yeah, we're not expecting everyone to be experts right out of the gate. But once you are able to combine your great design, your great character, your great elements, and incorporate them into an effective composition, like that's when it's art, like italicized art, you know?
Well, for me, it's like saying to somebody, well, I've eaten Trader Joe's mac and cheese, and I know it's the best mac and cheese out there. And it's like, there's so many other mac and cheese recipes. And it's like, really? You don't even want to try? Nope, I know, I'm good, right? It's like giving yourself options, because let's say you try another mac and cheese. Let's say you try Annie's mac and cheese. You go, ooh, I don't like that. Trader Joe's is way better. So fine. You no skin off your back. Now you know that Trader Joe's is the mac and cheese for you. So this is about giving yourself options, because if you guys never try, how do you know that you couldn't have done something way more interesting? I did this through all of art school. Every portrait I went through, it just was like, oh, I guess I have to put something there. Okay, here's a green. it was not thought about at all.
Clara, that one that you did of Saturn eating his children, I'm guessing that's what it was. This is a case where I actually like the simple background, and I can tell you it's because you used lighting to make that dark background feel as if it has a purpose, as if it's there. It's just got super drama lighting. So I think also it's just like, yes, simple things can work just fine. That Trader Joe's mac and cheese can be perfect if you're having it with a beer.
We have a question from Kian who says, when is it okay to have a white background? It's okay when that is the only thing that is going to help you say what you want to say. For example, this is great. Jordan said to me, one of the circumstances where I really thought it was necessary to have a white background. You guys know the movie The Matrix? That scene where he takes Neo into, and he's like, this is the real world, and it's all blank white, and there's nothing there. Like, that is a key part of that story. If they didn't have that shot of them standing in bright white, the sequence into the dark future and the gooey egg embryo plant things would not make as much sense. So you have to be able to justify why it's there. None of this lazy, well, I don't know, I don't feel like it. Just think it through, Okay, so those are sort of the composition cliches that we tend to see a lot. Let's go into some professional examples where I think things get a lot murkier, and we're not trying to tell you guys what's right or wrong, because that does not exist, but we're trying to tell you how certain people might perceive certain qualities. So we're going to use the ancient Romans had thumbs up and thumbs down, and that's what we're going to do for the next couple slides. And you guys can give a thumbs up or thumbs down for some of these. Ready? Plus, I love Joaquin Phoenix. He's so awesome. Okay, Alex, you gave this a thumbs down. What's wrong with this Dean Cornwell composition?
Big old thumbs down. And it's funny, I actually love Dean Cornwell. I love his work 8 times out of 10. This one is such a big thumbs down because my eye doesn't know where to go, because he's making everything the focal point. He really loves painting that little fabric in the corner. He loved painting that dude. He loved painting the horses. He loved painting the woman. And so everything is focal. And even in color and value, it's just kind of turns into a mush and a blur.
I would say I agree with you, Alex, because I feel like the background just sort of sucks. I don't know. It's so flat. And doesn't the female figure and the horse foreground, it just looks like somebody like cut it out from another painting and like pasted it on top of this hideous background. Even Cornwell, not good. I have to say, thumbs down. What about you, Lauryn?
That's not even the reason I think it's a thumbs down. There's so many things wrong with this painting. What is going on with that seagull up there? That awkward tangent is killing me.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. It's right off the wings.
I mean, it could be the photo. I just can't imagine an artist making that, a professional artist making that bad of a decision. But also, the horse's tail, its butt is randomly cropped off. Why? Why not include just the whole horse? What is that crop doing? Also, I didn't realize there was a third person in there with that horse. Doesn't even register.
So hidden.
Well, Salmon Fluff makes a good point. There's no hierarchy of detail in the foreground. Exactly. Everything just mushes together. You cannot figure out where the heck he wants us to look in the painting. So this is great. Seems like a lot of people agree with us on this one. Alex, why is this a thumbs up?
This one's so cool. Like looking, and especially comparing the two. Notice how we're not in any way disparaging Dean Cornwell's ability to paint or ability to evoke emotion. In fact, before we move on, Whitney Bennett was saying for the last one, it represents love and romance. So he's still kind of succeeding in his goals as an illustrator. But just notice how this one is so much more interesting to look at and dynamic. And the shapes of the deep shadows and the staircase are guiding your eye up. And it has the sense of foreboding. I believe he did this illustration for like a mystery story, and it has that looming sense in it that the composition is helping to do just as much as the characters.
Lauryn, thumbs up or thumbs down on this one?
I'm a thumbs up. I think it's very well. The only word I can think of for this is it's nicely groomed or pruned, maybe. I feel like the things that are sticking out to me are the things that should stand out. The way that light is hitting her chest, it's perfect. And the way it's hitting the banister too. You have the right angles. It's just very clean. And I like that.
I'm thumbs up. I mean, this one is just knocking it out of the park. in terms of diagonals. Like, you guys see the banister goes at a diagonal, but also the female figure's shadow makes an X. Oh my God, that is like, oh, so good.
And
like
how
it's
the
a great
floor, the stairs also like leading lines up.
Yep.
It's very small detail that like I want to point out. Notice how the wall is not just flat. It's not even a gradient. It's that speckled drywall. And like it keeps it interesting. Every little bit of this has something that you can enjoy.
Also, the way that the light shining on the hat is parallel to the light shining on her leg. So we're really focused on her outstretched leg too.
That's
so good. So good.
I'm curious, how many people read The New Yorker? And did you guys see this cover that came out, I think, last week? So here's the thing. I'm a big New Yorker nerd, and I'm always looking at it. And now that I've been around a while, a lot of the times each issue has one of my former students' illustration in it. So I follow it for that reason as well. But I'll tell you guys, I was like, really, New Yorker? This cover is your response to the Capitol riot that happened in the US? You're going to just do this dead center flag at half. I'm like, okay, first of all, this is really boring. Second of all, it does not capture the event that happened, which was extremely chaotic, involved all these people. It was an attack on the Capitol building. And I just was like, oh my God, so disappointed. Alex, what do you think?
I used to be a big New Yorker nerd, and I unsubscribe. I can't, because it would be one thing if all of their covers were just this boring, but they're not. Like, they have amazing covers and they have amazing work, but then they're also like, we've given too much work to like the really good illustrators. Let's give some work to like the bad ones too. And it's like, the inconsistency is mind-boggling to me.
Or maybe this is the art director's wife's son wanted a gig this week, because nepotism works out really well. Lauryn, up or down?
I feel like blah. So I guess that's down. I don't think that it's hideous, but I also don't think that it's super special. I understand what they're trying to do. There should be a solemnity to this, a feeling of seriousness. That's what they're going for. But what comes across is that we don't know what it's in response to. And also it has one of those terrible halos around it too, that I am very focused on, that is detracting from the actual issue.
Well, this brings up a good point, that composition is not just about, is it dynamic and engaging to the eye? It's, does the composition serve the subject and purpose of the image? In this case, it's a magazine cover. So you have the New Yorker at the top, and it's meant to communicate a recent event. Like Maya Higa here says, it looks too peaceful. Trent says, this must have been a real rush job. And Hellish D says, I think it's kind of a cliche. I saw this composition so many times. It's such a bummer, because it's like they could get anybody they wanted to make amazing work. And they have done that many times in the past. I mean, that George Floyd cover by Kadir Nelson was amazing. And so when I see stuff like this, it's like, come on, really? Okay. So now I have another piece, which is by, I don't know how to say the name correctly, Idel Rodriguez, who also was the same illustrator that did this cover. And Idel Rodriguez is a really interesting illustrator. I feel like he's sort of hit or miss. Like, the stuff he does that I like, I think is really raw and cool and bold, but some of his compositions are really bad. And I really like this one. I think it's just powerful and bold, and it sends a message. It's a good portrait. What do you think, Lauryn?
I think that it is an exciting portrait, and also pulling from maybe some historical portraits of past leaders, I think, or like revolutionary type leaders. So I'm really interested in that kind of thing. I love the diagonals happening with those stars. Feels very forward moving. as if we are moving forward in the world. And I like how the gaze follows that with those stars.
Alex, agree or disagree?
Honestly, like odd man out, I disagree. I think this composition's a little bland, and I think that his incorporation of the stars kind of strikes me as like, the composition seems bland. Let me put some stars in there. I think that it's, for me, like the good composition could be using things more with intent. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words a little bit, but they just feel kind of placed there.
So this is a great example that not all of us collectively agree. And we have other comments in here, like Moonbeam says, I don't know, this one's a bit cliche for me. Angie says, that scares me. I'm not a fan of it. Gianna says, I dislike the red. And David says, the background looks like it was an afterthought. So the important thing here, you guys, is not that you say this good, this bad, but you say why. What are the things in the piece that make you like or dislike it?
I've got a question about this because a lot of the things that people are bringing up are very relevant and important things that go into understanding a piece. But say, if we're talking about the color, if we're saying, oh, the red is very strong, Clara, is that a part of the composition? Does color count as a compositional element, or what? How do you talk about that?
I think it does. I mean, I don't know how you can talk about composition with this piece and not bring up the red. I mean, the red is so saturated. It takes up over 50% of the composition. So in my opinion, color is absolutely part of composition. What about you, Alex?
I think that I think that I see the color as different from the composition. Like for this one in particular, I'm trying to look at it without my glasses to get it a little fuzzy. And once you kind of do that and blur away, I think it's a clearer picture of why I don't like the composition, because it's just not enough for me. It just seems like a mostly red splotch with a little bit of blue kind of tingling in. And I realize how unfair that sounds. So like, oh, this piece is terrible if I squint my eyes at it and take off my glasses. Like, I'm not saying that, but I think it helps paint the picture of why I don't think the red color is a strong enough point to save the composition.
All right, Lauryn, this one is a thumbs down for you. Tell us why.
Well, I love Matthew Wong's paintings, but this, I can't stand it when people make cubular rooms. They just make kind of a cube, because you've got all these parallel lines, or these lines that are parallel to the edges of the canvas, and it makes the canvas look really blocky and awkward to me, or the painting look really blocky and awkward.
Alex, agree or disagree?
I agree. There's things like that really bottom strip of the texture, which is interesting, but it's like awkwardly cropped. And actually, this is a really good segue to continue the conversation on color versus composition, where color, this is bang up, way to go color theory, but compositionally, it's just kind of bleh.
I'm going to somewhat agree with you, Lauryn, in that the pattern thing at the bottom, that's driving me crazy. And I feel like when I see cubey things like this, I want it to either line up with the canvas or be so wonky that I don't try to do that. And this is that strange, awkward place where it doesn't really do either. But I do really like this smoky flame that crawls up the rigidity of the horizontal blue strokes in the back. Like, I like that contrast of those two things going up, but then I sort of lose the orange on the left. I mean, I like it as a color, but I don't really like the shape. So I feel that there are some things that are good, but there are also some things that are making me go, yeah, probably not. I like some of it, but not enough to save the piece for me.
Yeah, I did not even see the smoke until you pointed it out, because I was so focused on how awful the walls and ceiling were.
I think Michelle May hits it perfectly for me when she says, I think what bothers me is the orange leads me off the left side. And that's exactly it. My eye travels around, hits the orange, and then it just kind of goes. And there's nothing leading me back into it.
All right, Lauryn, why is this a thumbs up?
It's got so many lovely curves that give this sense of depth. Like the colors and the patterning are actually very flat, but because of the curves winding their way back into those hills, it feels very dynamic. And also I like this rhyming of shapes, or this repetition from the very small, I'm going to call it a smokestack, up until the super big smokestack on the right, you know, those white shapes. That feels really nice to me.
Alex, up or down?
Big up for me, echoing all of that. I love the curve guides you through it and then back. I also like the funny thing they're doing with loud and quiet spaces, where I think in traditional still lives paintings, like the sky and the lake would be the quiet space where it's just a flat color to let your eye rest. But in this one, the houses and the trees are kind of big blocks of solid color, and then the sky and the lake are really exciting and eye-catching.
Angel Reese says, I feel like the wispy shape from the last piece could be played with more shape-wise, could potentially tie in more color to it, like a light orange. So what I would do, you guys, because I know it can get very confusing here once people start disagreeing and everything, ask yourself, what are people pointing out? And ask yourself if you agree or disagree, because we actually had an earlier comment from Basil who says, this looks like a high school artwork. Is this by a professional? It doesn't have much interest to me. I wish it focused more on the candle and the smoke. So Lauryn, can you tell people who Matthew Wong is? Because actually he passed away very recently.
Yeah, he was, I'm going to call him like the art world's up and coming darling. He was about to get very, very famous and then unexpectedly passed away. You can look up his story if you want after this. But was seen as someone who was really taking painting to a new and intimate and very beautiful level, and it is especially known for his use of this blue and the blue and orange patterning.
I thought I read in the New York Times obituary, Lauryn, that he was a self-taught artist.
Yeah, and he was getting, I think one of my friends said that he was also autistic. Not that that matters much, but that isn't like widely represented in the art world. So he was just someone who was making really, really, really beautiful work, and it was not the usual person that you see in the art world, not the norm. Yeah.
By the way, you guys, if you did not know, we are running a winter raffle. You guys have about one more week to enter. And I would recommend you guys go to the raffle page because we have all kinds of goodies to be giving out. But most importantly, we want to keep Art Prof 100% free and accessible. Keep making even more content for you guys. So you can pledge monthly on Patreon. You can do a one-time donation. You can comment on the raffle video, not this raffle video. I have not updated the slide, but 2 days ago, we did do a raffle stream. That was 4 hours. You guys can check that out. And on top of that, there's also Patreon rewards. You can get snail mail from me. You can get email newsletters that have exclusive content. So if you guys like what we do and you want to see us keep doing it, please support us because we rely entirely on donations and we just have expenses that I know it looks so easy to do, but this costs a lot of equipment and all kinds of things to keep us up and running. So please donate to the raffle. Okay, Alex, why is this a thumbs down?
This one's a thumbs down for a couple reasons for me. One, every key thing is roughly the same size. By the hand holding the stake, the vampire figure, and the goon's head. They're all kind of the same size. They're in the same kind of area. And even with the text included, and even with the goal of it looking very pulp-y, it just doesn't push it far enough for me.
Lauryn?
Yeah, I feel like this one is kind of collaged in a in a not great way. There's some great collages, but none of these elements fit together in a way that makes sense. Like, why is this woman's figure just slapped on there like that, as if it was a sticker of the publisher up in the left? And why is some of the text in front but other text behind? It just doesn't make sense to me.
I just feel like the two figures are totally in different universes, and they're really static. The vampire dame, I mean, she's just like she looks like a mannequin at a department store. I don't know. It's just doesn't have any action. And the thing is, the text makes you think there should be action, but she's so stiff. And then the way that the figure with the hat is like sandwiched between the two pieces of text is awkward too. I feel like the space is just really compressed. So yeah, this is a thumbs down for me as well. Now, Alex, why is this one a thumbs up?
This one, I'll run through quickly why this one's a thumbs up, and then I want to point out like the differences between the two, where I love this one because your eye just travels through. I love the circle that your eye makes from the goon's arm going up to the zombie in the background to the goon's sidekick to the machine gun leading back to the goon's back. This one's so exciting and keeping you in that, and it's a really terrific cover design in my opinion for that reason.
Lauryn, thumbs up or down?
Meh, I'm a thumbs down. Sorry, Alex.
All good.
I don't get that circular motion. I feel like this is kind of like a pillar to me, and the edges to the left and to the right, about an inch width on either side, are doing nothing. So I just kind of get caught in that middle section without really traveling up and down very well.
We have a question from Maya who says, what if we're already on Patreon? How do we enter the raffle? Great question. All you need to do is bump up your Patreon donation by at least $1, and then that will have you enter the raffle. So thank you so much for asking that. I'm going to agree with Lauryn, Alex. This orange background, lazy. Also,
it's fun.
fun. Come on. He's totally just filling that in. And then, as Lauryn said, the left and the right edge, this is nothing there. Like, it's right in the middle. Like, he's starting to push in the lower left-hand corner towards that area. But to me, that's just too much like extra space back there. So yeah.
I think you saying it, I will agree. And what I think could push this one further, more zombies in the bottom and the top.
Yeah. Just some engagement with the corners. That's all.
Elisa says there's so little negative space in the vampire cover, nothing really had any room to breathe. And Charisma says the colors in these are just so good. It's that comics books saturation and style that just feels satisfying. Lisa says, I hardly ever like comic covers, usually too much. Well, what do you say to that, Alex? Because I think oftentimes there are certain genres where people have an expectation that compositions should be a certain way because it's a comic cover. What do you think about that?
And I think The Goon and Eric Powell is I'd say textbook example of that, where I think if Eric Powell was on this stream, please say hi, but if he was, he would say, yeah, that's the point. I think that his goal in those Goon covers was to make them very pulpy and very intentionally tacky in those like old 1950s to 70s crime paperbacks. I think that some of them, it's just he achieves that goal as well as being more compositionally interesting.
And Alex, are these comic book covers The Goon?
They are, yeah. It's a super fun series of just a goon and he kills zombies, and that's pretty much it. And it's just beautiful ink work throughout.
By the way, this stream covers somewhat similar topics, art school portfolio mistakes to avoid. And we also have other videos that address compositions where we discuss in depth why we think that they are effective. And if you guys want to access this later, this slideshow is available. The link is in the YouTube video description below. And actually, there are many slides we did not get to. And maybe you guys can check that out and take a look at them and play the game on your own to see if you agree or disagree, because I think it's such a valuable lesson to be doing that, especially those of you guys who are doing our self-taught artist curriculum. It's a really good way. Okay, we do have an art prof share today, which is where one of you creates an artwork in response to one or several of our videos. So the art prof share today is from Noor Nihar Malik, who created this digital illustration. And Noor says these two videos were really helpful in understanding how the saturated colors pop out with the muted colors in a composition. So it was this stream about complementary colors, also talking about color saturation. And Noor says, hence, the colors orange and blue are used in this digital artwork along with low saturated colors to see whether they really pop or not. This is an experimental piece. Well, how did Noor do, Lauryn? What do you think?
I love the different sizes of the circles going on here, and it's very playful. Like you have the really, really large one, you've got the medium-sized one, and the little one. The little one reminds me of some Irving Penn photography of recipes of food. If you want to look up that photographer, it's very classic and it's very appealing and edible. And I think you did a wonderful job.
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you achieved your goal really well of playing with complementary colors, but more muted. Like, it brings up that fact of it blew my mind when someone told me that yellow, like brown is a yellow, and that's like amazing. So the way that brown is working with that blue is really satisfying.
I just want to say that Noor is live with us here in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us live. And it looks like you've got some fans, because Dara says Noor has had some amazing art shares. Maya Hika says that is so cool. So yeah, incredible job, Noor. Very, very nice. If you guys want to submit for an Art Prof share, just go to artprof.org, click on tutorials. You will go to this form, which is the Art Prof share submission form, or you can just show us on Instagram, tag us at art.prof using hashtag artprofshare. And Art Prof has a podcast. It's available on Spotify and also on iTunes. In a few minutes, Alex and Lauryn will be hanging out in the Art Prof Discord. Please join them in the post live streams channel. Subscribe to the Art Prof YouTube channel so you can continue to grow as an artist. And thank you so much to our top Patreon supporters. Everybody knows there's a fourth column on the right. Think about this. If your name could be up there, you just have to make sure that you donate to our winter raffle. If you have learned something from Art Prof, if we have been valuable to you in some way, I mean, you can totally douse us with compliments. I don't mind that. You can do that, and you can support us to make sure we are always free and accessible. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.